everybody. Welcome to O Books Presents. My name's Ben Crabe, and O Books, we publish books for spiritual living, and one of the things we do is try and publish books which make spiritual concepts, themes, subjects accessible and easy to understand. And today I'm really happy we've got one of our authors, Colette Brown, on with us. She's a psychic clairvoyant. She's an author. She has her own YouTube channels where she talks about esoteric and spiritual subjects, and she's written 3 or 4 books with us. Let me just double check. One is on tarot. She's an expert tarot master, and the book is Tarot from Novice to Pro in one book. Divination is one of her specialities, so she's written a book, How to Read an Egg, for us, which is all about alternative aspects of divination and some of the lesser known ones, and how you can really make it a part of everyday life. Maybe the universe just isn't that into you, which is kind of a bit like Room 101 for spirituality, where she talks about her pet peeves and sets the record straight in various myths about spirituality, and a book on the menopause, a natural and spiritual journey about the spiritual aspects of the menopause. Hello Colette, welcome.
Hello Ben, good to be here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Happy to have you on because I really enjoy your YouTube channel. And
thank you. I enjoy doing it.
You know a lot and you talk a lot, and one of your gifts is sharing your knowledge in your YouTube channel and your divination and that kind of thing. But I'd first like you to explain a little bit about yourself, how you came to do what you are doing now, because I think you were a pharmacist before, is that right? And then you made the journey from pharmacist to working clairvoyant.
I've always kind of been psychic and clairvoyant, and it was always something I loved. And in my teens, I was very interested in being a writer, which was interesting because that came full circle as well. But I sort of put things from the psychic world aside and went on to study pharmacy, which I really enjoyed. But even in my first few years of practicing pharmacy, I was, really involved in divination, loved it, and got my first tarot deck and played about with it and spent a long time learning it, then used it for friends and family. And then what happened was I enjoyed pharmacy, but it wasn't it. There was something else that my soul needed, and more the fates or sort of spiritual coincidences, whatever you want to call it, kind of pushed me more and more and more. I did a charity night with the tarot and with mediumship, and I was in pharmacy at that time, and basically lots of people started calling up wanting appointments, and I was like, oh God, I don't even know how much I should charge or whatever. So I started doing 1 night a week of the clairvoyant readings, and then 2 nights, and then 3 nights, and then I went to 3 days with my pharmacy. And in 1996, so many things came together just to push me towards going full time as a clairvoyant. Now, it wasn't taken very well. There were a lot of people that were against it, going from what was seen as a very respectable occupation, a very good salary, to being a fortune teller. But I was at the stage I didn't care, and it's been the best thing I ever did. I've never looked back. I still register as a non-practicing pharmacist because I like to get my journals, and I find that knowing what's going on there helps me with healing, etc. So I still register, I'm non-practicing, but I haven't actually practiced since 1996. So I've been fully clairvoyant now for 21 years, although I did it for a lot of years before that. So that's how I came to become the clairvoyant. And as I say, I'm so glad I took that jump. It's made my life. It definitely has.
And you said you always knew as a child you were psychic, and I'm interested how did you know, or what kind of experiences did you have which showed you that?
Oh, to be honest, Ben, I've talked about this quite a lot. As a child, up to maybe the age of 8 or 9, I thought everybody saw things the way I did. I got some clues that they didn't. There was one time I was sitting watching, talking to my sister in the living room, and my sister died before I was born, and I was talking to her as I did because I saw spirits, and I saw my mum and dad peering through the little hatch to the living room, horrified, and I thought, goodness, they don't see Isabel. And they looked at me with such horror that I just, and then when I was about 8 or 9, I was on a field trip to Culloden Moor with the school. And as I walked towards the battlefield with all my friends and my teacher, I could see the battle round about me. Women were crying at the sides, and it was like being in the middle of something like Braveheart back then. And I cried at my teacher, get people off, get my friends off. And she took me to the bus, and I said, look, don't you see? And she said, no, Colette, you're the only person that does. And at that point, and then she added on, you've got some imagination, girl. And at that point, I thought, they don't see it the way I see it. And that's when I started kind of not saying as much, put it that way.
Yeah.
And, it was intense stuff. It wasn't, like I had a terrible feeling there was going to be a really bad accident when I was about 10 or 11 for my mum. And I tried to tell my dad not to go on the train. It was something to do with the train. But he was just, come on, Colette, we've got to go home. We got on the train, and I remember just sitting, sweat coming down me as a little girl, looking out the window and thinking, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be vile. And then the train stopped. It was old-fashioned trains with the doors you unlock that you see in, like old films. And we unlocked the door. My dad got me down, and I thought, I'm on the station, we're okay. But it didn't feel like we were okay. And my mum came down, lost her footing, and fell down the side of the train.
Wow.
And called legs. And I remember my dad just looking at me like I had horns, basically. And I was, at 11 years old, was like almost, I told you so. I've been telling you this for 5 hours. So there was lots of little things, but I had too many big events that I just knew I was different after a while. But to begin with, I didn't. I thought everybody saw things the way I did, but they don't. But maybe they could, I don't know.
I've definitely heard other people with your gift saying similar things about thinking it was normal, and then realising people thought, made judgments, and I've noticed that when I've said that I study astrology, people have either been polite, but there's been a judgment there. But sounds like it was such a strong calling, and you just were happy to be yourself, and people were gravitated towards you. It wasn't that other people's ideas or preconceptions didn't really get in the way that much, it sounds like.
No, it was quite. I'm writing my memoirs at the moment, so I've been through all that and thought about it a lot and enjoyed some of it. But there's also, I sometimes look at this little girl that was kind of, when you're little and also in your teens, you think to a certain degree nobody understands you. Well, I knew nobody understood me, and it was. And I touched my first tarot deck when I was 14, and something went, I was a wee bit scared of them, don't get me wrong, but something connected. And after I come in, when I was at university, I used to make a wee bit of, £2 or whatever, because people thought I could read palms. But I can't read palms, but I just used to take their hands and I would feel things through their palms. So I would give them a wee bit of, this, and they'd be like, wow, that's great off a palm. But I felt that was easier to say rather than say, well, I'm just taking your hands and picking stuff up. But I did it at uni a wee bit, and then I became a very, I want to be a very professional pharmacist, I want to. And I even pushed my guide away for a while, and but then working. By the time I was about 35, people would come in my pharmacy, and I would be like, "Yeah, hemorrhoids," and waiting the prescription come in. Yeah, hemorrhoids. Don't like the aura. Yeah, they need some iron tablets. Yep. It got to be a bit of a game between my dispenser and me, and we loved it. And it's actually in another book that I've written. I put that scene in, and people it was based on what we did. And then one day when I was getting pulled towards doing it full time, I realised that I was walking down my pharmacy in my white coat, and I put my hand in my pocket and my tarot deck was in my pocket. And I thought, no, that's telling me something. I can't, I'm in work. I can't wait for lunchtime to have a wee look at my cards. So it was, by that time in my 30s, it was pretty overwhelming.
Yeah. Wow. So many amazing moments, synchronicities. And one of the things you've written about a lot, as well as using is something you use with your ability, but is divination and the tarot. Yes. But I'd like to talk to you about what divination is quickly. But before, you don't have to be psychic to use divination, do you?
Right. Well, firstly, if I could look at it the other way around, right? Yeah. Divination officially is, I've got two analogies for this, and I think they work round the other way. Yeah. Basically, divination is the art or the practice of finding out the unknown or prediction using supernatural or paranormal means. And that's kind of it officially. But the way I see it, to make it easier for people, is that, say you had a blocked toilet, okay? And it was really blocked, you didn't know what to do with it, and you brought a plumber in. Now, the plumber that wasn't particularly great or whatever could go and put his hands down and pull things up and probably not fix it. But if the plumber came with the knowledge of the toilet and the pipes and also his tool bag, then he would probably fix it and give you the answer. So divination for me is a combination of the knowledge and the toolkit. And that toolkit can be tarot, runes, bibliomancy, all sorts of things, but you need the knowledge too, and that's why it's seen as an art, the art of divination, because it's no good just having the knowledge, you need to be able to use the tools, and vice versa.
And yeah, I like that analogy. So it's like you're using the tools, which could be tarot, runes, as you said, but you're kind of looking under the pipes in people's lives, looking under the surface and seeing where the blockages are. And it's looking at what's hidden.
You didn't have an interest or a knowledge in even paranormal, what spirit's about, what what consciousness is, etc. Then you have to have a wee bit of knowledge of that too. That there has to be an understanding of not just where the pipes are, but what the pipes do. And then if you add the toolkit to that, and I've always loved the fact that, when I started off, not so much started off, but used to, my table always had like about 3 tarot decks on it, my runes. I started off with a little Celtic crystal, a little paperweight that I just eased into, and nobody had seen that before, but it actually was just a paperweight. I connected with the spirals in it. So divination's been around forever. I mean, as soon as a human being could throw pebbles in the air or could look at the moon to see where it was, there's been divination. So do you have to be psychic or not to do it? Well, here's another analogy. Right, if I had a class of 30 students, okay, and I was a piano teacher, I could take all of those students and I could teach them to play piano if I was a piano teacher, right? Now, some of them, with their inner talent, would manage chopsticks, and that would be it. Some of them would go on to be, say, Richard Clayderman, but others would be Mozart's. So everybody has psychic ability and sixth sense, and yes, it can always be improved. And that takes practice. That takes knowledge, okay? But there'll always be people that are natural, they're talented, and they have it from, say, birth. But I believe everybody's got a good psychic awareness. Now, I have a science background, and this is getting proven more and more all the time. Science and the paranormal is matching up with quantum physics, you name it. But everybody has these skills. It's part of who we are as humans, and I don't think we've lost. I think we're evolving into it more.
Yeah, so everyone has some degree of ability, and some of us are, well, I can say my partner is a real natural in reading symbols and reading signs, and I'm all right. I have to work a little bit harder than she does, but
you still get there. That's the thing. I certainly, my family have always said I'm a bit of a workaholic, because when I want to know something or do something, I'll go into it like 110%, and I don't mind missing out on sleep or whatever to do that. Now, it's caught up with me a wee bit in my 50s. I'm not so bad now, in fact. But even so, even moving towards YouTube, instead of that being a hobby, it's now like, oh my God, I love this, let's do it. If you're willing to put in the work, the way I teach the tarot is very practical, and it's easy for people to understand that don't really necessarily want to take it to the level of knowing, maybe all the Hebrew symbols or all the magical aspects. So you find that, first of all, for whatever stage you're at, and that will change through life. You could say that you're okay just now, but in your 50s you could be amazing. Do you see what I mean? It's all like plateaus, then up, then plateaus, then up. If you commit yourself to a bit of discipline and also accruing the knowledge and then finding the right toolkit, then who knows where you'll be, Ben?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's everybody. Everybody that's got an interest in this, everybody that's drawn to it has something, and some will have a natural talent. You think of the number of people, say authors, that started writing in their 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
They sort of had a talent, but they maybe didn't have the confidence to get it out there, and then they're amazing. Yeah. Psychic awareness is exactly the same.
It's a talent you can develop, and if you're interested in it or scared of it, the message is go to what attracts you and draws you. Make a commitment and invest some time. For me, I get impatient. I want it to all come now, but I find if I relax and do it slowly and let a lot of time pass, then I suddenly find I digest it.
It's like trying to squish a tennis ball into a square box. It'll take its time, and it'll have to find its own way, If you expect, some people come, obviously I pass on my knowledge through books and whatever, but also when I was doing my readings, a lot of them were just spiritual path working to help people. The one thing that stopped people in their tracks from being who I believe they could be on a spiritual level was two things. One, impatience, and the other one was lack of discipline. If you've watched some of my videos, particularly the magical ones, you'll know I'm like discipline, meditation, do it, find a ritual, find a way of walking your talk, making your spiritual practice part of your day. It shouldn't be separate. It shouldn't be after 7 days you go, oh, I think I'll have a wee meditation, or I think I'll look at my cards. No, if you're serious about it, those cards or that meditation, they become part of your day, whether it's first thing in the morning or before you go into bed at night. And that's the way it is. And if you don't have the discipline and you're not prepared to be patient, then you're not going to reach the heights that you can.
Yeah, fantastic. Discipline and patience. So I think we should talk about, we've talked about divination generally. I think we should talk about the tarot now, because you're a tarot master, and I was very drawn to the tarot in the shops, in the Mind Body Spirit shops, and very drawn to the images before I knew anything about it. What's drawn you to the tarot? What do you love about the tarot? And
everything. Yeah. I'm a very visual person, and although I have other psychic skills, I'm more clairvoyant, which is a clear sight. So I work very visually anyway. I lost 30% of my hearing when I was 3. And then more when I was 10, and then in my 40s, a lot more of it. So I'm hearing impaired with 2 devices. And that makes you look at things so much more. I know that sounds odd, but I can't rely on my hearing to let me know if someone's shouting behind me or if a truck's coming behind me. I don't hear. I'm watching you at the moment. We're on Skype. That's why I was wanting a good connection. So in that way, I'm very, very visual, and I always have been. But my first tarot deck, I was walking past a wee seaside shop, and it was in the window, and it called to me. It literally said, "You're mine." And I went in and I said to the guys, "Is that tarot deck for sale?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Do you know the tarot?" And I was like, "No, not really. I was only about 23 at the time, 24. And he said, "Oh, that one's all in Spanish. Don't get that one. It's called Tarot Balbi." And I was like, "Oh, Spanish? Oh, no, not going there." I'm scientific. I love the English language, but you wouldn't want to hear my French, put it that way. So anyway, I walked out the shop, got 2 shops further, and went right back. And I said, "No, give me it. I'm buying it." And I went back and started learning it from the visuals rather than the little pamphlet. And the funny thing is, years later, I had to go to a funeral for my dad's side of the family, and I'd never met them. It was always very hush-hush about my dad's side. We didn't know that much about them, but I went to represent them, and I found out that my dad's family were called what would be Black Irish, which came over with the Spanish Armada to Ireland. And all my cousins had dark hair and dark eyes and whatever, and I was the wee ginger, but I actually have Spanish bloods. So the Spanish deck, I didn't know why it attracted me, and I didn't know why I understood it, but I did. So I just learned by the visuals, and then I decided I would need to get like a Rider-Waite deck, which is the traditional one that you learn from. And I found it so boring. Oh my God, I hated it, which is a shame because it's the one we tend to teach from. Novice to pro is taught through Rider-Waite. What I'd like to say to anyone that's very visual and sees my Rorig deck that I use on YouTube and readings, you have to go through Rider-Waite first, or an equivalent like Morgan Greer, Hanson Roberts. These are the decks that you learn the meanings from. Now, I learned the visuals first and then went and matched it up to the book. And for that, I then needed to study and find out what each card was. And then I became very, very intrigued by the way it all worked. And bit by bit, I moved on to different decks to see if they would suit me, because Rider-Waite didn't. And I found Tarot Balbi quite limited because it wasn't a scenic deck, it just had pip cards, like a playing deck. And then I found Rorig. And although I use other decks, the Norse Tarot, Shamanic Tarot, Rorig is it for me, but it's so visual. And the tarot cards I use, there are meanings. You'll see that with the weekly tarot card on YouTube. But I could be reading for someone, and there's so many visuals in them that I could be attracted to see one tiny little thing in the card. And that, for me, as a clairvoyant, overrides the basic meaning of the card. So I read my cards with a background knowledge, but also just straight intuition. And that's the best way for people to learn.
I see, yeah. So your intuition and your ability hones you in on the card, or the aspect of the card, or the bit of the card that is calling for interpretation.
And that a set meaning for a certain card. But if someone asks me a question, blah, 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 my eye will automatically be drawn to where my guide seems to want me to go. And in one card, there's this lovely card, the Nine of Cups in Rorig, and there's like a tiny little cut hole in the bottom of it, little shape. And one of my business clients asked me, where would the investment better go to, etc. It was a business reading. And my guide took my eye straight to this little thing, and I was like, that's odd. It's just like a little cutout in the card. I said, that's the map of where it is. And he looked at it and he said, that's Qatar. That's Qatar. We've got a choice of Qatar or Cayman Islands or whatever. That's Qatar. And it's like a little map outline of the country guitar.
Yeah.
So that one little visual gave him his answer, but yet the whole card wouldn't have, because it was just saying things will be happy. So to me, the cards have to be packed full with visual, but you've got to learn with the traditional decks first. I believe that maybe you need to take that standard basic knowledge that has been with the tarot through the centuries, and then let your own clairvoyant and psychic skills give you what you need.
And can you say something briefly about what is on the tarot? Because to me, I could say that it's 78 cards, and they're all powerful symbolic images, and the whole system of the images represents every facet of life, or every dimension of life in some way. And
that's the way I see it. I mean, I used to say to people that my love for tarot is so much that I see life as tarot cards. I mean, to give you an example, years ago, my daughter came from school, and she said, Mum, one of the wee boys was run down by a school bus. And I said to her, oh my goodness, the Ten of Swords. You know, I saw that accident right away as a Ten of Swords. So I see situations. I've always been a great people watcher.
And the Ten of Swords is a man lying down with lots of
there's swords in his back.
Swords in his back and blood.
It's waiting to happen, or a trauma. So she's kind of said, you know, oh, this wee boy was knocked down by the bus, and instead of saying, well, what was his name, or, you know, is he all right, or whatever, immediately I said, oh, a Ten of Swords. So I've worked and loved the tarot so much that I feel like when I used to teach, and that's where Novice to Pro came from, I would say take a tarot card every night and meditate right into it, go right into it. Gaze, let your gaze go round that card, let yourself be drawn into it fully, because it's only in doing that you get to understand all the nuances of that card. So see anyone like, you know, I've learned a tarot in 6 weeks. I'm like, no, you've not. I'm sorry. You know, even my book, Novice to Pro, in one book, it doesn't say it's a quick option. It's about learning, doing the questions, etc. So the tarot for me, there's those 78 cards. There is not one thing that is about life. I've never read where a card hasn't told me what I needed to know about a situation. And that's why it's such an amazing form of divination. It's vast. The potential of knowledge it can give you, the potential of answers it can give you is vast. And that's why I don't really recommend it as someone's first divination tool, to be honest. I think people would be better starting with maybe oracle cards, maybe psi cards, and working their way up to the vastness of the tarot. Do you see what I mean?
I see. And oracle cards, can you explain what they are? They're like a bit simpler.
Yeah. Oracle cards tend to be like angel cards that maybe have 30 cards in them, and they're quite inspirational. Yeah. And it gets you used to dealing with cards, taking them out, excuse me, maybe reading the book, understanding them, getting to know how to place them out. There's loads of oracle cards out there. There's nature oracle cards, there's angels, there's shamanic, there's everything. Now, they're good to get people to dip their toe in, because I tell you something, Ben, if a person can't connect with the discipline of understanding a deck of 30 or 40 cards, they shouldn't bother with the tarot, because 78 cards with there's different spreads to be learned. There's all different ways of using. I use my tarot magically as well as intense. It's vast. So you can dip in on a practical level with my book Novice to Pro. That came about, by the way, when I opened my premises in 1996. A year later, I wrote a course for Open Scottish School of Tarot. And I started a diploma, a yearly diploma. And I figured out a way of taking a few cards each week. It was like every Monday, teaching them, and then giving the people a spread to do just with those cards. And then the next week they'd earn more cards and another spread, and they'd have homework to go back and forth with for the 10 months. And then when I left premises, it was an online course. And I had a different book that John Hunt were asking to see, but they went, it wasn't for them because they wanted a divination book, and it wasn't divination. And they said, but you know the tarot, what have you got in the tarot? And I was like, well, I've got my course. And they said, can we look at it? And I said, but it's not a book, it's a big course. And they took it, and a day later got back and said, can you turn this into a book? And I was like, yeah, I can, it's fine. So that's how it came to about. That book actually was written almost 20 years ago as a course that many people took and got their diploma. But it works really well as a book as well, I must admit.
So fantastic. Tarot from novice to pro in one book. If you're thinking of learning, there's
Yes.
your book. And like you're saying, it's the commitment. It's like what you said in your course, and every week they go and do a spread with a limited amount of cards. It's like burning the image into your consciousness, isn't it?
Yeah. It's learning a spread and using it. It's learning more cards. Then I add on, and the questions that I ask them are questions that I've been asked many times, excuse me, in my own practice. And then ethics in as well. How to set up a reading, all these things. It's not just about knowing the cards, particularly if you want to read for other people. So there's all that. So the book, you have to work your way through. You have to do the bits of homework. And then when the people have reached the end of it, they'll have a great knowledge of spreads, a great knowledge of the cards, and ask them to go back and do it all again with the full knowledge of the tarot. Because as you're going through it with the book, it's increment upon increment. So at the end of the book, I want them to go back and do all the spreads again with the whole book, and by doing that, they'll know. They won't know all about the magical, esoteric, deep stuff about the tarot, but they'll know about the archetypes. They'll know how to do a practical spread, and they'll know how to understand the cards in their own intuitive way. And I think that's the best way.
And you just mentioned ethics. That's really important. How is your ethical orientation? Because when people come to you if they come to you in the past for a reading, or if you do a spread for someone else, and people are typically, there's uncertainty, they might be suffering a bit, or they might be curious about something. What's your approach to ethics in what you say and how you say it, how you communicate with people?
Well, my approach to ethics was I went seamlessly from being a pharmacist with a professional ethical code that we could get struck off if we didn't stand, if we didn't stand by, straight into readings, and I just used the same code. It was as simple as that, because ethics are ethics, And just like any, you're going to get some bad lawyers, and you're going to get some bad pharmacists or doctors, you're going to get some bad readers that don't care about ethics, but part of the ethics bit of my book is so intense. The ethics of knowing where you stand on certain things and not going over that ever. Like, I always I wouldn't see anyone under 18, because under 18 they could start fooling about with this, that and the next thing. Don't get me wrong, I'd maybe give them guidance through their mums or their dads, and if they were very psychic, actually chat to them, but not a reading, because you're very open at that age, and then you need to go for another one, and I don't believe in dabbling in your teenage years, put it that way. And I also feel that there's certain things that you should never say to a client. You should never say, go do this or go do that, because that's not your place. The tarot will show, like the way I tend sometimes to do comparative spreads, like, where would I best live? 3 cards there, 3 cards there, 3 cards there. And it will tell you, that one looks really good, that one not so much, but that one could be, right? And that's what you give to the client. They have to make their own mind up in it. If a clairvoyant or a psychic ever says, you go and do this, or I'm telling you that this is the road, no, that's bad ethics, because it's your choice. We've all been given free will and free choice, and any person that tries to rob you of that is not being ethical.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's a great point to make.
ethic, and you know that there's lots of other tarot readers I know. I mean, even with old books, there's Tiffany Dressara. She's got a brilliant book out as well. She's fantastic. She's got the same ethics, and you'll find that people with ethics tend to build up a very large following, and it's because people know that they're not going to, you know, say. They're going to allow the person to express their own self. I would never want someone to go out and do something because they'd felt I'd told them to. It has to be their own decision. All you can do is advise, you know. And I don't think you can ever 100% like say someone's going to die or something like that. So I wouldn't even go there, if you see what, you know. These are. Like everything, nothing can be 100%.
No.
You know, say you said someone was going to die and it was the 1% time you got it wrong. That I couldn't countenance that. See, when I was in my 30s, my brother came up for a reading because he was going through emotional hardship, and I put out his cards, a general spread for the 6 months ahead, and in the 3 months mark, I saw the cards that combine. That showed that his dad would die 3 months' time. And then it hit me, that's my dad too. I got an insight that my dad would die in 3 months. Now, certainly, I got to say goodbye. But 3 months to the day, my dad died. And that was the worst 3 months of my life, because part of me knew I was right, and the other part of me was like, no, I can't be right, I can't be right. It pulled me apart. So I would never say anything like that to someone. I saw my own dad's death through the tarot, reading for a brother. You know, there's places you don't want to go with divination.
Would you, in a reading, would you just not talk about that unless they specifically asked you, or how would you? Because that's a great example, because I think at the end of the day, that's what people are most scared about when they go for any reading. Yeah. That's the one.
Don't tell me about a death, and I'd be like, no, I wouldn't tell you about a death. But people will come. I had a woman, and she broke my heart. I cried the whole way through the reading. I wasn't very professional, but she sat down. I looked at her aura, and I see a weird colour of black in auras as cancer. And as I looked at her aura, it was everywhere. And I just looked at her, and she said, "You know, don't you?" And I was like, I said, "Look, you're here for a reading. Why are you here?" And she said, you know what you know. And I was like, "No, I don't know why you're here, because there's not much I can tell you." And she said, "Look, Colette, I've got terminal cancer, I've got 5 months to live, and I've got 5 daughters, and I need you to tell me that the 5 of them will be okay before I go." And I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours going through wee spreads for all her daughters, letting that woman know that her daughters would thrive, or what she needed to put in place for them. Now, I'm even upset about it, thinking about it just now. Yeah. Now, she gave me a big cuddle and said that I allowed her to go and die. But I didn't tell her she was dying. I could see it, but she told me. There's a way around it. Like I said, you know, why are you here? You know, what do you want to ask? But so there are times where you have to acknowledge that a person may be terminally ill, but that must come from them. You would. Oh, I've got another laugh story. You'll like this one. I read for a woman who had premises in Straven, and I don't remember reading this that much. You know, if it's at one. So I'd seemingly advised her that I wasn't happy about what I saw around her breasts, and I would prefer she got a wee. Like a mammogram or something. So that was fine. I forgot all about it. And about 5 months later, I was walking down the road, and she came towards me and she said, Colette. I said, what is it? And she said, you were right with my reading. And I said, couldn't remember a thing. So I said, oh, great, that's wonderful. And she said, no, I did have breast cancer. And I was like, I didn't mean great. I mean, great, it's okay. She said, no, I went into a mammogram and they picked it up and I'm fine. I'm okay. Yeah. And I was like, but I get so annoyed when I can't remember people's readings, because you can't, you know, unless it's someone close or whatever. But I actually said, oh, that's great, what happened? And I got it really wrong, but I got it really right. So there's times where I wish I could remember what I've said, but it's just impossible. But there's a situation where looking at someone's health, looking at their aura, and without scaring them, saying, you know, when you do a mammogram, because it might be worthwhile just getting one, and if it's one due, make sure you go for it. And there you picked up, she thinks I saved her life.
Yeah.
So there's ways of doing it ethically.
And you've just given like some wonderful examples of how learning tarot and reading, you know, doing these kind of readings can really help people at really sensitive and deep times of their life. I have to point, you might see in the mainstream press there's a kind of snootiness or judgmentalism around this kind of work, but I've noticed in real life people are a bit more open than that.
Yeah, it's so much better. I mean, when I gave up pharmacy in 1996 to come and do it, the reason that I felt free enough to do it, believe it or not, is my mum and dad had died in the previous 2 years. I don't think I would have been able to do it because I was brought up Roman Catholic and my dad was staunch Catholic. I had my tarot from him. I didn't even know. I couldn't tell him. My mum loved it, mind you. But it was only once my mum and dad had passed that I felt, well, I'm just going to do it. But, you know, but back then it caused all sorts of, you know, when I said to my boss, I'm going to go self-employed, he said, where have you found a pharmacy? And I was like, no, I'm going to become a full-time clairvoyant. And he was like, ha, really? And I was like, yeah. So, but you know what I think has been good all my life? I've never held back from saying to people, yeah, I was a pharmacist or I am a pharmacist, because back then there was this fortune teller, someone that could do nothing else, that maybe had a wee gift, the wee woman in the corner with the wee headscarf on and whatever. Now, I went into my first premises, I went in a beautiful black designer suit, because that was who I was. I was a person that went out to my job in a suit every day, and I wasn't going to change that because that's who I was. Now, granted, I became more boho over the years, but the point was that when people came to me, they were seeing a woman in a business suit with cracking premises, absolutely lovely, and they relaxed. But if anybody tried to put me down in any way, you know, I would. I don't mind slipping into the conversation. Yeah, I know that because I did that when I was a pharmacist, or, you know, and even when you're applying for, like, maybe back for bank stuff, I always put all my initials because they're not going to give to a clairvoyant. Back then it was like, no. Do you know something, Ben? You laugh at this. Just 7 years ago, when my daughter got her first car, she wanted me on her insurance because it would bring her premiums down. So she put down, what is your mum's job? And she put clairvoyant. The stuff come back and it said mum's occupation, and they had me down as a circus performer. A circus performer. Yeah. They took a look at clairvoyant and didn't know what to do with it. So that's still there officially. But I specialise in business readings. I'm dealing with men and women that, you know, we're taking big decisions. Well, not we are, but I'm advising them on lots of very good things, even for the, you know, the world. And I'm very proud of that. So you have to be taken seriously. If you're saying to someone, right, that road will bring you a good return of that road might cause bankruptcy, you've got to know your stuff. You really have. And you've got to look as though you know your stuff. Yes, that means having your makeup on. Yes, that means having no daft paraphernalia about, you know. It's got... I've spent my last 20 odd years trying to bring the level of respect for what I do up. Yeah. And because of that, I've done lots of interviews, lots of newspaper articles, TV, you name it. I've been prepared to go on and show that clairvoyants and people that are spiritual get away from the old way of looking at it, the old hags or whatever. The more people open up, the more they see this, and that doesn't matter whether there's someone that's a stay-at-home mum or there's someone that's a businessman, it's there for all of us. But I would like to continue on the way I'm going with the teaching, etc., showing my art of divination, because it's an art at that level, rather than it be perceived lower.
Well, your enthusiasm and passion for it is palpable and inspiring, and I agree with you that like you said, you always get some dodgy eggs in any profession. But the people I've met who practice either clairvoyant or astrologer or any of these alternate divinatory advisory roles, they're some of the most ethical, professional people who take it deadly seriously. They want to get it right, and they want to help.
And I love it. I call it the younger ones, but there's people that have studied under me that are out with their own practices now, and I know that their ethics are spot on, and I know that, you know, in retiring from face-to-face readings this year, that I could name 3 or 4 people right away that I would say, yeah, you can go to them safely. Yeah, they're going to do that, you know. But I want to continue. You can tell I'm totally passionate about it. It's been the main part of my life, to be honest. I don't really remember being a pharmacist that much now. In more of my life I've been a clairvoyant, etc. So, and it's because I am clairvoyant who became a professional clairvoyant, if you see what I mean. But I love it, and I hate when it's put down, and I hate when you see, you know, things in the newspapers of frauds and this, that, and the next thing. But I'll keep fighting. I really will. And the knowledge I can get out there, the better.
Fantastic. And well, we're kind of running out of time, but we're not quite there yet. We've still got time to speak. But I want to talk very briefly at the end about 2 of your other books, How to Read an Egg and Maybe the Universe Just Isn't Into You. And maybe you could talk briefly. How to Read an Egg is maybe talking about the alternative and possibly simpler ways of divination and exploring those. And well, I'll let you.
Well, How to Read an Egg was funny because again, I found out that my paternal grandmother was clairvoyant in Glasgow, and she died well before I was born, and that side of the family we never really talked about. I can understand that, you know, they might have been perceived as, you know, I don't know, but so I found out at the same funeral that I talked about earlier, I found out that my grandmother on my dad's side used to have people coming to her with an egg. And they brought their egg, and then they held it, and then they cracked it into a glass of water, and she read the egg. Now, I didn't know where my gift had come from, but it was my paternal grandmother. Paternal grandmother. And I was thinking, this is an amazing fact. My granny read eggs, so I'm going to try it. And then when I did it, I thought, oh my God, this is hard going, but it's divination. And then I thought, what are the other things I don't know that could be fun? Because I was so caught up in the tarot, I thought it'd be nice to go on a wee journey. And that's how to Read an Egg come about. And it's done, don't get me wrong, it's a book that teaches how to do the different arts, albeit rumpology and eggs and tea leaves, etc. But it's humorous as well, because there's quite a few of them I failed totally at. And I would say I could never recommend this to my business clients, you know, getting egg all over them or whatever. But it was such a good fun book. And I thoroughly enjoyed writing it. And it was nice to know all the different odds and ends. And there's chapters in it about omens and all the different, you know, manses and stuff. I loved it. And to be honest, that book trundles along quite well in the States. So I don't know if they get the humour in it a wee bit, but it is nice that, it's nice that that kind of humour is taken well.
Yeah, but fantastic. And maybe the universe just isn't into you. That's kind of your pet peeves and cutting through the nonsense that's out there in the spiritual world. Because, you know, on one hand, you know a lot about psychic. You said you can see spirits, you can see auras, but on the other hand, you're very grounded and
very grounded.
You're no nonsense, and that's kind of what the book is about, isn't it?
Well, what happened with that was it was just there's a lot of things led up to it, but I would say over the course of the week, I had seen like friends who were really good Reiki people getting almost losing business to new things that were coming through that were basically Reiki, but just by another name. And I thought that's a bit of a shame, you know. And then I heard of certain things that I didn't like that were being done in psychic fairs. Ethically, I wasn't happy with, you know, you hear of things. And then I heard someone had brought forth their own form of healing. And, you know, they could have called it like intergalactic monkey healing. And it went out there, and I was ranting to my husband. I was like, oh, and this, and how does, and it's taking money off people, and I just ranted, and he said, Colette, go write that down. Go now and write that down. So I wrote for about a day, non-stop, and then I went to John Hunt and said, what do you think about this as the, you know, starting point for the book? And they were like, yep. And then that little book, I let everything out. And do you know, the joy of doing it was because in some ways I was poking fun at myself in some of them, because when you're involved in this, yes, you do gather crystals till you've got no more room for crystals. You do collect tarot decks. So I was able to do it in a humorous way, making a very strong point. But I reckoned at that stage I was just on Facebook, and I thought I'm going to lose half my Facebook clients here. Followers, but it was received quite well. Or the people that maybe didn't like it didn't comment, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
I just needed this rant out there, and it is a bit of a rant, isn't it?
Yeah, but I like it because, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, and you've got, you know, if you're interested in tarot, if you're interested in divination, if you're interested in spirits, there's a lot of stuff out there, and you need to find a way of cutting through, don't you? And you need to find a way.
You definitely do. You do. And there seemed to be an explosion of things that were all of the same, but got bigger and better names, or people were cutting corners to do things, or they weren't, you know, like they weren't upholding the professionalism. And then there was just things like, you know, I have a Native American spirit guide. I've had him since birth, and like, there was a stage where everybody I met had a Native American guide, and it was like, really? You know, fair enough, but it's not that they don't, but there were some people that maybe had felt a spirit round about them and said that's a Native American guide, when maybe it could have been a family member. So I'm not putting that down, but it was like a big bandwagon that everybody was getting involved in, and there were people that were doing it that maybe were doing it with a good heart, but still hadn't maybe the knowledge or the equipment to do it. And there were others that were in it for the money.
Yeah.
And no, not allowing that. Fade, not enough.
Yeah. So maybe the universe just isn't that into you. That's the name of the book, and it's very entertaining. Now, I want to ask, we've got to wrap up in a second, but I want to ask you, you said you retired from face-to-face reading, so I want to ask you, what are you up to at the moment? Where can people find you? What are you offering? And how can we get to you?
Well, basically, I have my hearing deteriorated a bit, and also my husband's not been so well, so took the decision to step back from the readings and kind of semi-retire. So what I'm doing now is I'm finishing my memoirs. I'm investing a lot of time in my YouTube channel for teaching, etc. And trying to maybe put more articles out as well. I had a column in a newspaper for 20 years, a psychic column, and YouTube kind of took over from that, but I'd quite like to do more writing work, freelance. And really just, I live in a beautiful place in Scotland, and it's stunning. I've got a wee cottage and my hubby and my 2 dogs, and I want to enjoy a wee bit of life, getting off the, you know, I have been a workaholic. It's time to step back from my mindset a bit. But in saying that, I'm very, very, I see myself as, someone said something the other day, which I was like, they said, Colette, with your Facebook and your books, you're an influencer. And I was like, what's that? Oh, I quite like that. And I thought, well, if that's the next stage in my life, being an influencer via the media or being just who I am, then yeah, I like that. So that's kind of what I'm doing. It's a wee bit of a mishmash, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
I definitely recommend you check out Colette's YouTube channel. What's the title? What's the name of the channel?
Colette Clairvoyant.
Colette Clairvoyant, fantastic. And although if someone's listening to this and they think, I love you and I would love a reading with you, but you're not offering readings, are you happy to point people in the direction of people, like you said, former students, people you trust?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. I've been doing that for the last couple of months anyway. I've got a little group of people that I know that, maybe someone's needing more of a medium, someone's needing more of a clairvoyant tarot reader, etc. Yes, I can recommend that. But if it's advice on, say like my child's developing psychically, and I'm a wee bit worried what I'm getting, by all means, people get in touch via Facebook, Colette Clairvoyant or Colette Brown for that, because I'm here to, I'm not necessarily doing face-to-face readings, but I'm here to give advice, and I really don't mind giving people advice on their spirituality. In fact, they come to me, I could do a video on it. Do you see what I mean? Some people have said, oh, what do I do next? And I'll say, right, okay, I'll do a video on that and put it up. So it kind of merges into what I'm doing. So yeah, no face-to-face readings, etc. But I need to be contactable to give people advice and to continue influencing.
Yeah. Oh, well, fantastic. You're definitely inspirational influencer to me. And thank you so much for coming. I could talk all afternoon now.
If you need me for the filler again, I'm available.
No, seriously, it's so much fun to talk. Thank you. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Good luck with the Obix channel, etc. And I'll look forward to it going up. And it's been lovely meeting you, Ben. Really look forward to hearing from you again, hopefully. Okay.